Thank you, Kishore. I'll try to I come from Canada, and Canada is a confederation, so it in itself is simply described as a bit of a confusing structure, but it's a very interesting model, and perhaps there is a potential also in understanding the national level in a greater breadth. I just have 20 slides, it's not so much. Yes, thank you. I'll very quickly, because we are indeed in a format that we'd like to share some ideas, but mostly have a discussion. I've just leave with you the motto of the city of Montreal. It's Concordia Salus. It comes from the 19th century, where the French Canadian, the Scots, the Irish, and the English were actually fighting each other. And the first mayor decided we have to live together anyway. We have a common future. So whether we like it or not, we're stuck together, and we'd rather work on ways to accommodate things. And I think it's a bit of a metaphor. Some of these cities actually have managed to go beyond their differences, and the challenge with our heritage perspective is perhaps to do that. I'll give you an anecdote. In 1991, ICOMOS Canada was holding its conference in Ottawa on the theme Heritage and the Environment. At one point in the conference, one person stood up from the environmental field. We were having a discussion, and she said, that person, well, don't you realize you guys from the heritage field will never get it? The real problem on Earth is the human species. And from there, I derived my conviction that we are not so negative. You know, our field is fundamentally optimistic. We realize the mistake that the human can do, but also our capacity to find solutions. The role of heritage from a long time has been to carry memory. Our job is to extend the life of things. And I'm not so satisfied with perhaps the Hangzhou document that says that our ambition is to preserve, to safeguard and transmit. I'd like to enjoy, I'd like to enrich, so that we give ourselves an ambition which is beyond the simple modest respect. We have to deal with neighborhoods, we have to deal with habitat, we have to deal with a land pattern that is significant. We're dealing with things like the Kutamaku, which is a World Heritage Site, which is a human habitat that speaks to the whole planet. Perhaps our challenge is also that we connect the personal and the universal in the way we approach things. Some years ago, the United Nations developed the Millennium Development Goal. In our field, what we did, we said, we're going to give ourselves some Millennium Goal. And what happened in the civil society in Quebec, we met, and what we did is we rallied the clan. The landscape people, the archaeologist, the historian, the architect, the museum crowd, the archivist, the folk dancing, the intangible, whatever it's called now. We all got together and we confronted our family feud, and we developed a common declaration that then was adopted by the Assembly of the City of Montreal, the founding of the new cities. And the core element to that, as a definition, is very, very simple. Heritage is what carries memories. And our job is to make sure that that memory is rich. It has different forms. We've managed to integrate these fields. It's not a unified field, it's actually closer together. The built, the landscape, the archaeological, the natural, and the memorial. Instead of saying intangible or software, we said memory. And memory has to do with music, it has to do with word. Place naming is something that we forget about. We also look at the different actions. We also look at the different players, from the holder to the public to the NGO, the institution, academia, and the media. We forget about the space of communication, which is so important in our field. Some principle, our most challenging principle in the field of heritage is not how to keep the past, is how to make sure that in 25 years, whatever we have done today will be a source of pride, not a curse on the next generation. And this is a perspective, trying to think about it, it's so difficult to share it. People are so happy with the opening ceremony of a museum, of a building, a restored church, or whatever, but they have no future in mind. They don't think about the next 25 years is nothing. Frankly, we should work at the scale of centuries. But at least past the next generation, and look at all the international declarations, they don't put ourselves in this so often. Our government has established different systems, standards and guidelines. But what is most interesting and what Ishar has been referring to is the Loi sur les développements durables, the culture of the Sustainable Development Act. And as far as I can tell, it's the only legislature in the world that has actually included, and I'm looking for other examples, included cultural heritage and its protection in a universal and inclusive way in the heart of the development model, not in the impact assessment formula, but the development model. And maybe there's some solution could be interesting to share. In Canada, we have 3 legal systems: the customary law with the First Nation, we have the French civil code, and we have the British common law. We are able to compare and confront, but maybe around the world it might be useful to see how development in a sustainable way is defined. How is it treated at the level of government, not just at the level of Ministry of Environment or Public Works or whatever, because it's one of the challenges we have to overcome is that sustainable development has been taken over by very narrow fields. You know, it's green roofs, it's bicycle paths, and it's recycled paper. But somehow it has to be more ambitious than that. And if you look at this model, this is an example, and perhaps I would like to terminate and to finish on concrete element. This is in my city. It's called Montreal Park. It was designed by Olmsted. We have a little knowledge about reform movement in the 19th century. Landscape architecture was invented as a social equipment, not as artistic, aristocratic feature. He did Central Park in New York. The Montrealer purchased that property. It cost them $1 million. Who's the economist here? $1 million in the 1870s. Was more than the total income of the city per year, which was $850,000. Montreal had the second rate of birth debt after Calcutta. It was a very poor society, but with determination and with democracy and with internal conflict overcome, they managed to purchase this property, create an icon. Why? Not just for the calculations, because they had a sense of pride that was invested in that site. They went for the best designer in the world in those days. They couldn't afford Alphand, they went for Olmsted, but it was because it could come by train more often, and they created that park. Today, millions of people cherish this. It's greater than the Himalaya in the heart of the citizen, and perhaps that's also a lesson of sustainability, is that you have to root things so that they grow in the future, not just fix the numbers today. A few words, and I would like to leave us on a challenge. We have to do some reconciliation. This is a World Heritage Site in Austria, where you have young contemporary artists operating in a World Heritage Site. We have to reconcile ourselves between geography and history. We have to make reconciliation between conservation and creation, but we also have to develop a sense, my feeling, our lesson, is that we have to develop a certain sense of joint governance between civil society, the decision maker, and this may call for an implementation mechanism, for instance, a public agora every 2 or 3 or so many years that join the different branches of society rather than imagine a technical monitoring. There has to be an engaging process, and this is through that I thank you very much. It's a combination of local place and world oral intangible heritage. You know, it takes two to tango, and that is a tango in the park next to my house. Maybe we could collect cases of public spaces around the world. The Aga Khan, and I would like to salute His Highness for his inspiring speech yesterday. The work that they have done in the Old Cairo is a great model where public space has actually been a sense of recreating sustainability in society.